Hi, I'm Lewis, and I'm just going to talk to you about target audience. Now, well, when it comes to a target audience, you kind of have to know the preference of what genre or subgenre they're gonna want to watch to understand, what I want to make for my film. Now, as you can see, I've kind of set up my the horror films that I can actually find. Now, see, for psychological, there's like hide and seek. Now, in relevance to audience, I can imagine that the reason why they kind of go for such films like this is there's not like an actual presence of a monster or demon or something like so. There's not a physical like unnatural monster or there's not a ghost. Right? It's kind of more like realistic and based on like schizophrenia and stuff like that, especially with hide and seek. So the jumps that I kind of get from that are normal sort of thing. You wouldn't exactly get like a demon running out at you. Now, for Massacre, I kind of like set up like two different styles. There's kind of like the Saw and the Hills of Eyes, where there's an actual antagonist within it, which audience kind of likes, and they can actually physically see what is happening. That's like the usual convention with Massacre. Some form of bad guy going out killing a lot of people. Now with the Final Destination series, it's quite different. You'll find that when you watch the Final Destination series, there isn't an actual physical antagonist. It's supposed to be death as a presence, which they do really well within the first film, but they kind of and the second film's right, but they kind of lose it as they kind of go through just like spewing out deaths and deaths and deaths, and over here, kind of, so we have the unnatural films. I kind of split them off into two sections. I kind of put the classic unnatural horror. So you kind of like have The Exorcist, which is kind of borderline with a bit of psychological stuff in there, but I still put that with unnatural. Like the demonistic presence. Then you have a really good classic, An American Werewolf in London. This for me is my favourite kind of werewolf film there is. I love the scene where the transformation. But have you kind of noticed? As you can see, the older horror tends to be like 18, whereas like the more modern from like 2010 plus sort of thing, about 2000 or a bit below that for Silent Hill. For the unnatural is to be a 15, which is kind of good for the target audience I'm kind of aiming for, because it's not too old that you're kind of losing the majority of the public that you want to go see your film. So kind of like Fright Night and Silent Hill. With Fright Night they kind of mix a bit like because it's a remake. They kind of mix a bit of like comedy in there, it does work with the film. I did like the remake, but I felt it did feel kind of lose its kind of main part of the horror, even though the original wasn't too scary. But and then for Silent Hill, the kind of unnatural presence of of the village, which at first it's kind of half and half between psychological and unnatural, I'd say. Well, in the relevance to like target audience, I kind of noticed across the board the kind of more more successful series of films as tend to be the 15 sort of section, which is more or less what my target audience is looking at. They kind of want not cheap scares, but quick jumpy scares, but they don't want to see the intense gore, because I obviously even though with Final Destination there's quite a high level of gore to it, it's not quite the standard of Saw, with cutting people's eyes out and stuff like that. So that's something I've noticed quite a lot when I'm looking through at my target audience, what their kind of preference is. They kind of like the big jumps and that. So I don't know, like with hide and seek, it's a lot to do with like the music and the use of dark shots. Whereas like with like Hills of Eyes, it's more or less most of it's like quite in daylight, and it's just kind of like mutated men attacking people. That's what I've got to say about the target audience.